scientist, a father, a husband, a pioneer, but above all, an inspiration. Born in 1932, Raj Sikka, respectfully called Professor Sikka, was a man who survived the turmoil of partition and travelled halfway across the country on foot in search for a life of knowledge.
He was around 15 or 16 when he crossed over from Pakistan. That is in August 1947.
Yeah, it was very tough in the initial months, They had no money at all.
Having lost his father at the tender age of 5, he understood and imbibed his mother's teachings early on in life.
She thought that if her sons could study, then life would be easier for them. She disciplined him in the sense that she wanted to keep him on the right track. He wanted to teach. That was a passion for him.
But that was not to be. Who would have imagined that this disciplined young man with high ideals and an urge to learn would transform the way weather is forecast in India? On 1st of October in 1954, he began his tryst with meteorology.
Initially he was in IMD, then he moved to IITM Pune, then many years he was director of the institute. Then he later moved to Delhi and he was part of National Center for Medium Range Weather Forecast in Noida. Recently we launched in 2012, Ministry of Earth Sciences launched the Monsoon mission, and it was a 400 crore big project with a big ambition of improving monsoon forecast. And he is the right person to lead that monsoon mission team, and so he was made as a chairman of the monitoring committee.
He is one person who was able to relate monsoon right from the observations to the dynamics to the prediction, and finally how it is related to the societal aspect. So he had complete understanding of this particular. There are specialists who know about one aspect of monsoon, but he had total picture. And because of that, he was the first one when the satellite pictures were available. He was able to see the northward propagation of these the cloud zones which move and how they are related to the interseasonal variability. So, this was a very first of its kind of finding in the world of the northward propagation of the monsoon cloud zone and its relation to the active and break cycles. So, this was is wonderful. Another finding which he was able to bring in the large scale features of the monsoon was relationship of Indian monsoon with the ENSO.
It was in 1980 that he published a paper linking monsoon with the El Nino phenomena, something that has been one of the most important findings in the history of Indian meteorology.
Globally also he was mentoring and finding out the deficiencies of global simulations on monsoon rainfall. So, that way he was the, maybe you can say, senior person who had complete understanding of monsoon, following it year on year for about 40 years in a sequence.
60% of India is still dependent on agriculture, and Professor Sikka was instrumental in decoding the dynamics of India's most important weather phenomena, the monsoon. As a pioneering scientist, his motive was beyond personal. He was devoted to two things. First was to encourage and help the future generations of scientists to develop the science of meteorology further.
He used to virtually sit with them, rewrite their papers so that they get encouraged and promoted. This used to be phenomenal. He was not a computer man, he was not computer savvy. So, he used to write by his hand and extensively used to write and give back to the students to correct it. So, it is phenomenal.
He was an international figure. So, he always, but that he did not keep it for himself. He always used that opportunities to help others, especially young generation in the country. So, we should be thankful to him.
He has been directing or guiding, advising many youngsters from the universities for their research work. In that, for example, anybody used to go and then talk to him, he used to criticize, suggest how to go ahead about that.
And the second was to make sure that all the research is rooted at ground level, all for the larger good of mankind.
the research is one part, but the research to be converted into operational products and related to the farmer. So that was very much there. So he worked extensively on the drought.
He was obsessed with the monsoon. He was probably India's best expert on droughts. He could name every drought that ever was in the last 150 years. And if anything, he understood that a drought had a soul and how to find one, how to catch one. He knew the impact of it.
The interseasonal variability, which leads to the active break cycle, and it directly impacts the farmers. He was very much involved in understanding these interseasonal variability, and he supported these initiatives both at the central level, state level, also in the private sector.
Having observed the monsoon for nearly half a century, Professor Sikka was truly India's monsoon man.
He used to always tell me that, if scientists have made a prediction, I mean, they should just stick to it. And, there is no harm in either being wrong or of being forced to respect certain sensibilities, because the monsoon is a very powerful system, and there is no shame in knowing that sometimes nature can and frequently will confound your calculations. So in that sense, he's always been an extremely valuable reference point, and somebody you can trust that okay, he's going to give you this very important unbiased view. And another interesting thing was that he engaged with the private sector very very passionately, and it was novel.
He defined our purpose as a company and also as an individual. He explained to us what weather and climate is and the impact, and why a lot of work is necessary over the longest time, and it takes a lifetime to get somewhere, and that it needs to be taken very seriously. For me, he condensed and simplified the monsoon. The correlations with El Nino, the fact that there was a level of predictability in the phenomena, and all the science that went into it. He explained the history of numerical weather prediction. He made me meet the people who were working on it, the limitations, the opportunities. If anything, he was the right person for me to meet that part of time, because most of my life and everything that I'm doing is out of a base understanding that he gave me.
For some people, passion never dies.
Even after he crossed his 80 years, he used to very actively participate in big meetings and conferences, and he was a vivid student even at the age of 80.
The energy level which he used to have in meetings till late evening and come out with critical comments, totally many young people used to feel tired towards the evening, but he was there very much, from the first person to arrive and the last person to leave.
He used to tell us कि मेरा mind बहुत अभी भी कुछ करना चाहता है. It's my body which is not साथ नहीं दे रही है.
Professor Sikka, a man of great words and even greater action, always stood his ground and knew how to value his roots.
He loved this country. For him it was mitti. This is मेरी करम भूमि की मिट्टी. And that is why he wanted to go back to Pakistan too, because that was his true mitti for him. That is where he was born, and so he wanted to be able to feel that, that mitti and breathe that air and remember those days once again. He went back to the house where he used to live in. He found that house. His memories were so strong कि वो गलियों में से यहाँ ये गली में ये था, वहाँ वो था. And he searched and he found that house, and he went and he entered that house, and he called me up from there, and that emotion in his voice was like a child कि वो खूटी वहाँ थी वो भी अभी तक है.
He came back and he said, I have fulfilled, I've achieved everything in life.
Those who knew him well knew he was famous for more than just his monsoon forecast.
He was famous for it. Anybody who knew my father knew his temper.
He shouted at anybody, anywhere. He could shout at anybody, anywhere, anytime. Okay.
But I also think that they were all so tolerant of his temper, because they knew that it didn't come from any bitterness or any feeling of anger towards them. It was because he wanted them to excel.
If he shouted at you just now, the next minute he'll have forgotten about it.
He was the clearest, cleanest human being. If there's something he did not like or disagreed with, he wouldn't think. I mean, context and tact were not his friends.
He was indifferent and impartial, all in pursuit of good work, as witnessed even by his daughter, who also worked at IITM.
I joined the institute in 1980. There were many employees in our organization who came to know after maybe 4 or 5 years that I was Mr. Sikka's daughter. He was that separate from, he never really interfered in my work, never really asked me, questioned me as to what I was doing, what type of research I was doing. Yes, but as and when he got any feedback about me, he would come back and tell me, yeah, I heard this thing about you. Good. I mean, if he heard something good about
He honestly wanted that every person, every individual should be the best that they can be. And that is why, जो मेरी मम्मी है और जो aunt है, he was always pushing them to do their best. As women, there are some things that you can't still achieve to your maximum possible. But my grandfather wanted that they should do the best, they should be the equal to all men.
It took a lifetime of dedication to achieve what only a few have.
He was a sadhu to me, he was a teacher. And as time will pass, the whole world is going to realize that his knowledge and his work is going to be a significant part of a chain in climate sciences worldwide.
He is known as a Monsoon man internationally. In the country, he is known as the Bhishma Pitama of meteorology.
He always has been an inspiration to me. Father of modern meteorology in India. That's what you. Yeah, father of modern meteorology in India.
Positively, his work will speak and keep us inspired for many years. See, I think generations to come, so long as Monsoon is there, meteorology is there, and the country is there.
All the young scientists like us who used to get a constant source of inspiration from him. Whatever scientific research problem we used to take to him, he had a very quick solution, and he has a very rational thinking, and his knowledge base was kind of an encyclopedia. We will surely miss him for all the research collaboration which we had.
I think Mr. Sikka by the end of his life knew that his life had a purpose. And I remember when he came back from Pakistan, he said, I can die now. I've seen my home, I've been to Pakistan, I can now die. And as sad as we are, I think he did what he was supposed to do. And by the end of his life, it's absolutely clear to him that his purpose was served, and it is up to others to take that forward. I don't think he left with too many regrets that I know of.
वो गीता का जो वो सार है ना कि कर्म करते जाओ फल की आशा बिना, that is what my father was. You know, he was a true Karam yogi and Gyan yogi. So, you know, I think he's at peace. I think he's definitely at peace. And I would just want everyone who has worked with him, who has ever associated with him, you know, I would want them to just remember the kind of person he was and to remember his values and principles.
Professor D.R. Sikka, the Monsoon Man.